take it to the top, not the bottom of the top. Top talent.
Welcome to my little bi-monthly audio project. This is Top Talent. This is my podcast. My name is Kiti Phillips. I'm a former morning radio co-host from Albany, New York. I did morning radio for 30 years, retired from radio, and this is what I'm kind of messing around with now, this podcast. The whole idea of it is to feature talent from the upstate New York area, the capital region, all kinds of talent. Talent comes from all walks of life. The only way I was kind of stretching the parameters of this a little bit was maybe I would also feature famous people who are coming to the area. Talent coming to the capital region of upstate New York, but at least it's centered around the capital region of upstate New York. So what am I doing this episode? I'm doing an episode with people that don't even live here. But I had to make an exception this time because of, the very serious situation going on, the pandemic. And I had this brainstorm of possibly talking to people. I just want to talk to regular people that I know real well. For the most part, there's one person here I've never met before, but try to connect with people from different parts of the world and maybe do it through Zoom and talk to them about the pandemic, what they're going through, how they're dealing with it. I mean, it's pretty obvious everybody's dealing with it the same way. We're all in shock, basically. But just trying to find out maybe the different rules of the different countries and just get some interesting insight into what it's like in other places besides the good old USA. I'll let them introduce themselves, but I will say right now, through the power of Zoom conferencing, we're going to connect Spain, England, Finland through Atlanta, Georgia, which she'll explain, and Albany, New York, all together as we discuss the coronavirus here on
Top Talent.
All right, here we go. We are waiting for the other participant, but this is still working out pretty cool so far. I didn't really plan it this way, but if this all works out, I have one person from the entertainment business, one person from the business community. I have one person from the scientific community. That's the person we're waiting on. And one person from the arts and law enforcement community kind of rolled into one. So instead of me blabbing on, please, we'll go around the room, state your names, occupations. Go ahead. We'll start with the Hearseys.
I'm Glenn Hearsey. I live in the UK in Buckinghamshire. I run a cash register and EPOS systems business, so we put tills into a lot of hospitality and retail sectors, but majority hospitality.
Great. And Don? Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly.
Don't worry. So I'm Kelly. I'm Glenn's wife. I live in the UK too, born and bred. I've got two careers. My first career is I run my own photography business, and I do commercial photography for people's websites and products and things like that. And my second career is I work with law enforcement and private security firms. I'm what's called a super recognizer, which is a facial recognition expert. So I am deployed to find baddies in a nutshell.
Well, you found a baddie. You found Don Dworkin.
Yeah,
I recognise him from the police files I've been looking through.
Okay, Don.
Yeah, my name is Don Dworkin. I used to have a career in music before the pandemic, and now I have no career, no gigs, anyways, ahead of me. But I live in Barcelona, Spain, and I play a lot of music all over Europe when we do play. And I spend a lot of time in the United States, where I'm from, and I've had a music career for over 40 years there. So there.
Absolutely. So what I was interested in with this, what are the restrictions right now going on in your country? I know right now, technically, we're still in lockdown. New York has been very conservative about opening up. I think I read in Spain, you're opening up, right?
I wouldn't say that.
No?
We're last week was the first time I was allowed to walk at all, unless I was going to the store for food or the doctors or the pharmacist. So it's been a week, and we have specific. We have specific hours that children can walk, and regular adults can walk or exercise, and senior citizens can walk, and it's usually twice a day for about a couple hours each time.
Really?
it's phase 0. Phase 1, there'll be some small stores opening up in groups of like 10 people, and cafes can be a third fill, and so that's kind of where we're at. I do try to go out and take a walk once or twice a day just for exercise, because I'm sitting at home feeding my face the rest of the time and gaining weight, and somehow watching Netflix, you don't lose weight that way.
No, absolutely. Absolutely not.
Terrible.
Now, we have our fourth guest here. I'm very excited. I'm sorry for all the confusion. We have Dana Haberling, and you're in Atlanta right now, correct?
Yeah, I am. We came back just last Monday.
Oh,
so
great.
Maybe 10 days we've been home or so.
So I have to introduce you to Don Dworkin, who lives in Spain, and the Hearseys, Kelly and Glenn Hearsey, who are in Buckinghamshire, England.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. Well, that's our show. No.
Great.
Okay, can you state your occupation, Dana? Because we've never met before. But...
Okay, so I'm actually a statistician at the CDC here in Atlanta.
Wow.
But the reason I'd been living in Finland was I'd taken a year off work to do coursework for a PhD in epidemiology. So everything is very timely
really
and interesting
timely.
to me.
Boy, we got to tap your brain. And I got your connection from my niece and nephew. They're the ones that told me about you, I guess.
Right,
you're all good
so
friends.
I met Kiti in graduate school at Emory.
Okay.
That's how I know the two of them.
Yeah, it was really.
And where were you in Finland?
We were in a city called Tampere, which is about an hour and a half by train from Helsinki, like a little bit northwest. So it's still in the south part of Finland, but not in Helsinki, which is mostly where people know if they know Finland exists.
Yeah, I've played. I'm a musician. I've played in Finland a few times.
Really?
Oh, okay.
It's a beautiful country in the summer for me, anyway. So
Yeah.
I've never been there in the winter. So.
But it's more
Yeah.
rural.
I like.
I'm sorry. It's more rural in the
yeah.
southern part, isn't it?
Rural. No, Helsinki's in the south, and most people live in the south.
Mm-hmm.
In the north, it's very sparsely populated.
Oh, the north. Okay.
But like the town we were in had, I think, just under 250,000 people. So not huge, but not, teeny tiny. Coming from Atlanta, I was a little bit nervous about going to a town that size, but it's actually very pretty dense, and we live downtown. So I didn't even really feel like, I'm living in a small city.
Okay, great.
The north is Lapland? Is that?
Yeah. It's really an incredible place to visit.
The question I was on, I want to get to Kelly and Glenn, because actually I was talking to both of you before. Kelly, I think you had mentioned how strict it was there. It's incredible. You can't even walk outside?
We were a little bit less strict than Spain, actually. So my brother lives in a Spanish island, and he's had the police patrolling their streets. They're not allowed to go anywhere. They're just easing that now, as Don was saying. But in our country, we're only allowed to leave the house for 4 reasons, which is to go to the store for food, to get one daily exercise, so one short daily exercise. If you're going somewhere for medical reasons, or you can go to work if you're not able to work from home. And then if you go to work, it's got to be socially distanced and, within all the regulations. So it's been quite strict since the 23rd of March. But we think that tomorrow night, Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, is going to make some announcements that will be easing things as of Monday, but we think they're going to be really small steps. It's not going to be anything very big.
Now, after what happened to him, you would think that he'd be very conservative, right?
Yeah.
Now, how about for Glenn? Being in the business world, how has this affected... you're not allowed to... Well, let's say you work out of your house, right? Your office is out of the house.
I have been doing... the little work that I have had, 95% of my customers have been forced to close. So all hospitality industry was forced to close down on the 23rd of March, I believe. Or maybe the week before that, they were forced to close. Yes, it was, wasn't it? It was the Monday before that. So obviously that was 95% of my customers just closed overnight. So I have had very little to do now, but because we do a lot of pubs and restaurants and things like that, and a lot of them have been using their commercial kitchens and converting them to a takeaway business. So I've been helping them build online ordering sites and things like that, which we've then linked into our EPOS systems that we've got in the premises. So there have been bits and pieces to do. I've had to go out into the office probably once every sort of 6 or 7 days. Most of the work I could do from home. So I've been out a few times just into the office, which is about 7 miles away from here, 8 miles away. I've been to customers on site about 4 times in the last 6 weeks. One time was just to set up a new broadband system for them so that they could operate better with their online ordering.
I really wish I had a dog, because people could walk their dogs,
yeah, that's it.
I love dogs. Now I love them even more.
Now, Dana, how about for you? You can tell us from both ends. How's Atlanta doing, and how was Finland when you were there?
Well, it's very different. So in Finland, there's not a lot of cases, or relative to a lot of countries in the world. Right now, Finland has 5.5 million people, and there's just under 6,000 cases total, and there haven't been as many deaths. But pretty quickly, they did adapt to closing things down, but it wasn't really strict. So I think it was early February, there was one case in Lapland from a Chinese tourist, and I think it was a woman who ended up being hospitalized. But I didn't really know exactly where it was. The language is really difficult. And so they do have some English language news, and then, of course, like translators and stuff, but the translations can be really bonkers. So,
right.
I get like really high level sort of information. But yes, there'd been this tourist. And so then it was kind of like, okay, it's in Finland as well, but it seemed really under control. And so it wasn't until like maybe the first or second week of March that things started closing. And it was right around the time things were happening in the US. But like for us, it was a little bit strange because we lived in an apartment building right downtown. So right across from the train station, like on a block with like a big department store. So we actually went grocery shopping in the basement of this department store. It was sort of like a boutique-y sort of grocery store. But we lived across the street from a Lidl, which is like a very popular discount grocery. And so, we saw people, I love looking at their storage bin junk stuff. So, because they always have like crazy things. So because we could see the Lidl entrance from our apartment, and there was like a little park across the street from us, like people would, they'd be distanced from each other, but people, I don't know, it's starting to like be sunshine there. It's been dark and gray for a long time. So people wanted to be outside, and they seemed distant, but because of our location, it was almost hard to tell that things had really slowed down. I mean, definitely there was less traffic, but it's hard to say, was it because we were downtown? We still saw a lot of people, but it was thinner for sure. So when we go to the grocery store, people are not wearing masks. There's not a lot of strict rules about what can be done. Schools closed, but quickly they started allowing like the youngest children to go to school, and you could go to daycare. It was encouraged not to take your children if you didn't have to, but they were like, a lot of people are on the front lines, and like, if you work in a hospital or you work at a grocery store, or you have a job where you can't stay home, you can bring your kids into daycare. So I was in a program with 8 other people, and two women had their children with them, like a 4-year-old and an 11-year-old. And I know the 11-year-old was doing school from home, and then the woman with the 4-year-old just, I think her daycare maybe wasn't open or not encouraged to go or something. So people were staying home and distancing, but it wasn't like really strict. Like I definitely did not feel in lockdown. I didn't, we would go out for walks, and we'd see people. Actually, that was the first time I ever saw anybody running. Was we went out for a walk, and I saw somebody. I was like, oh, people really do run here. Well, then coming back to Atlanta, like, I see mixed things. I see things that people are like out of the parks and stuff, and people are not distancing. But also, like, we went to the grocery store, and I only saw one person not wearing a mask in the grocery store. We live in a high rise, and we see people in the elevators are wearing masks. Like if we have to get something from the front desk, like if we get a, Amazon order, grocery delivery or something, we wear masks downstairs. So I don't know. It's kind of a mix of experiences.
Now, have all of you seen the protests that are going on here in the United States? They're going, so many going crazy. What's your feeling about that? I think this goes according to personality. I think if you're the type of personality who is a law-abiding citizen, you're going to be totally upset. Not law-abiding citizen, but just somebody who follows rules. You're going to be totally upset. If you're a person who just doesn't like to be told what to do, you're going to be for it. So let's go around the room that way. What's your feeling when you see these crowds? Because I'll tell you my feeling. Don?
Can I use the word assholes?
No. But you just did.
Well, then I can't say anything.
Okay.
Or have I said it?
I think you've said it all, actually. Yeah, unreal, unbelievable. Well, I should be objective here. How about Kelly and Glenn?
Yeah, we some people. I think overall the country is shaming people on social media for flouting the rules, and people. We live in a small village here, and yesterday was VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. There's huge celebrations for 75 years of peace in Europe, and we were encouraged to have street parties, but to just be in our front gardens or socially distanced. It's quite random. But I know that some neighbours, a few streets away, they had the police called on them because some people heard them singing and shouting and mucking about with their neighbours way across the other way, but they were just shouting and laughing with one another and having a lovely time celebrating. And the police were called, and the police had a lovely talk with them and said, "Yeah, you carry on doing what you have fun. Sorry, we were called." But so there's some really, really angry people around who don't want you to have any fun. But I would say the majority of us are doing what we're told. Don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with the question as far as opinions on the protesters, it's, like you said, it's just people for whatever reason just have a complete disregard for authority, and they just have to try and show it any available opportunity, and it's just absolutely daft. I mean, everybody knows how this thing spreads, and I don't understand why or how people think that they're for some reason immune or they don't have to follow the rule. It's just, I don't know, it just seems mad to me. But
And now, Dana, from an epidemiological, is that a word, standpoint, does steam come out of your ears when you see people,
I mean, yes and no. I think, while I want to sympathize with people feeling like uncomfortable that they, there's this thing about, I want to, get whatever seed for my lawn because I'm staying at home. Like, I can sympathize with that. Like, but at the same time, like from a transmission standpoint, it's, I find it upsetting to see people in close contact because I think about, the asymptomatic cases and people with underlying conditions and, just the other people at risk. And even if you have a mild case, like who wants to be at home with a fever for 2 weeks or, tired and like, you can't do your yard work if you're like not feeling well. So even that I think is bad. I think, one thing is like, everyone of course is entitled to their opinions or thoughts. I just, I always wish for things to be based in, science and reality. But I also think it's sort of a vocal minority and it's, we're all kind of looking for information and what's going on. And we're all, like Kelly said, most of us are staying at home, listening to the rules. So we're watching the news, we're checking Facebook, that's just like 70 people in, Michigan on one day protesting. So
it's a vocal minority,
but
But when you get the president of the United States not wearing a mask and having a meeting with people today, very close to each other, it's ridiculous.
And somebody in his entourage was tested positive.
Bad example.
Did you see that? Somebody in his entourage, his personal assistant, and also Pence's
PA, wasn't it?
Yeah. So both of them. Of course, they're being tested every day. You saw that, right?
Yeah, but these tests are not always accurate.
That's
correct?
right. In New York, it's kind of like you give people an inch and they take a mile, or to convert to English terminology, you give somebody a centimeter, they take a kilometer.
That's European. We're still on inches and some of it.
No, but I see it here. You can go out like what Kelly said. in England, I guess you said you can go out for a short walk. Well, how do you define, or short exercise? Well, how do you define what a short exercise? For me, I would take a short exercise, but I see people, on bikes here taking, hikes and going all over the place. How do you define that?
Well, they say
It actually is in Spain. It is defined.
It is defined.
You can go a kilometer from and circle of a kilometer from your home.
Yeah.
And if you get caught and you get checked, you get fined hundreds of euros.
Wow.
Wow.
And here it's an hour, so you're supposed to be able to go out for an hour's exercise a day, once a day for an hour. But nobody's checking on it. Nobody's ever been stopped and said, "Hang on, how many? You've been out here for an hour and 2 minutes."
Right.
They were checking if you went out shopping or if you didn't go out shopping, they would check receipts to see if you had actually shopped.
Wow.
So
Interesting.
The
it's
thing
pretty
is,
serious. I mean, of course, Spain had
has got it
many
right.
thousands of yeah.
Yeah, my brother's obviously telling me daily what's going on in Menorca, the Spanish island of Menorca, and doing the same rules as you, Don. And they in Menorca, it's a very small island, but they now have last week they had 3 cases, and they've had 3 deaths in the entire pandemic. They've only lost 3 people, and they only had 3 cases on the island in total last week. So they had 2 ICU units open. They closed one of those down shortly, after, because they didn't need it. They just locked down without anyone being able to break the lockdown, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you say to that?
Right. Just reminding you're listening to Top Talent, and if you'd like to listen to some of the other episodes, I've got about 45 of them. They're where you found this one, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find podcasts. That's where they're sitting. Let's return now to Kelly and Glenn Hearsey from Buckinghamshire, England, Don Dworkin from Madrid, Spain, Dana Haberling from Atlanta, Georgia, who has studied in Finland, and yours truly from Albany, New York.
Top talent.
Glenn being more in the business community, Kelly, part of your law enforcement, part of your occupation, you deal in public places. Don, you entertain, and without your entertainment, you have no income. You might think that you people might say, let's relax these restrictions because we have to get back to work. So, what's your feeling?
No way. I don't want to be in a crowd. I don't want to be in front of a crowd.
You're looking at
my life.
It's science over the economy. It's science over money.
Definitely.
How about you, Glenn? Because I'm thinking, you're without these pubs open, you're screwed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are, absolutely. It's really, really tough times financially. It is devastating. Yeah. But the worst thing would be to open up too soon and then it flare up again, and then we go into full lockdown again. Let's just get it done. Let's get rid of this thing as soon as possible. If it takes 6 months, brilliant. But that'd be a result. But at the end of the day, if we go out too early and then it booms back up again and we're all on full lockdown again, that's the worry. And you just got to look at it sensibly, really. And yes, it's going to really, really hurt, and we're going to come out of this, sort of with lots of business debts and whatever. But you just have to bite that, and just, it's just got to be, we've just got to get rid of it. And I think coming out too early isn't going to help.
Gee, you people actually make sense. I wish you lived here, because I do not understand.
It's a little depressing.
It really is.
In my business, because most of what I do is I play for Lindy Hop dancers,
right?
And that's a contact sport, You're
right.
Yeah. So I and of course at the racetrack, we play there every year. This would have been our 36th year in a row that we play a 6-week season there, and that's all about crowds. And then I do the bookings down at the Empire State Plaza, as
right.
you know, Richie.
Sure.
And that I doubt that's going to happen.
No. We've
already had a couple of our groups cancel anyway. So, but I hope that it's still not definite yet down there. Nothing's definite, right? Everybody's just kind of in a wait and see.
Right.
But without a vaccine, who's going to want to be in a crowd?
And Dana, you're the expert here. what have you been finding from your studies? Are we all underestimating how bad this could be even in the future? I mean, as far as a second wave and a third wave, I heard from what they said last night, it's like this could go on for years.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been reading too. I think, what's really hard about this is that we're used to scientists and experts giving us information and then just taking that. But the thing with something novel, we've not seen it before. So we don't know anything and the information is constantly changing. Whereas like as a person experienced in this, like I expect, changes, and then they say, okay, the model projections are this, and then the model projections change. Like that's, just the mathematics behind it. So I expect those changes. So it's constantly changing. And I understand that like for the public who are not experienced in these sort of new topics or new ideas, like it could maybe be hard to understand all these differences that are going on. So it's, there's nothing to grasp onto and just say, okay, right, in August, everything is going to be better. But yeah. I mean, yeah, I haven't been at work. I haven't been involved in the response. So I only know what from reading the news and, trying to keep up with what's going on. But I mean, yeah, it definitely sounds like this is going to be sort of prolonged or, as, someone was saying earlier, like maybe it'll slow down, but things will open up and then we'll see, you've seen all those graphs of the Spanish flu, like how different cities reacted faster, slower, and opened back right up. And then there were more cases or less cases. So, it's going to be really dependent on the space and how people react and also how technology develops and, people being able to hire contact tracers and, everything, all these moving parts, getting supplies, like, do we have enough nasal swabs? And, there's a lot of moving parts to how this is going to go in the future. And we make our best guess as to what's going to happen. And then hopefully, most of us fall in line because we want it to be better.
See, this is what's scary is that even the scientific community, we're just used to getting answers. Right, to things like this. Like if it's the flu, all right, you got a vaccine, don't worry about it. This is just like an unending saga, right?
Yeah, well, it's not unending. If in 1918 they can have the flu end, we can do it in 2020 or 2021 or 2022. Wow. But, with better technology and better treatment and stuff. But a lot of people died in that, and a lot of people are dying now, and people are having to deal with the fallout of that, unemployment, stress, teaching your kids at home. There's a lot of, stress and problems that we're having to deal with that unfortunately come along with
50 million people died in 1918.
That's true.
And I think it was 6 million in the United States. Pretty sure.
Every once in a while,
all of worldwide population as well, right?
Yeah.
It's huge percentage.
It really is. Yeah. So if the doors opened tomorrow and it was just completely unrestricted, if your government said, okay, it's quote, over, how would you all react to it?
I think when the science supports or when the data and there's evidence to support that things are slowing down, then I'll consider getting back to normal. But even then, I think we probably have to ease into what we consider normal. Like, right. In other countries, people wear masks for pollution or maybe for infectious diseases and stuff. And, we really haven't been used to doing that in the US and nor in Europe. But that may become part of what's sort of our new normal for the next couple of years until we have it under control.
In 2011, we had a 3-month gig in Shanghai, China. And, pollution is very bad there. A lot of people wore masks, especially bike riders, but just walking around, they wore masks. And it's a funny thing. I'm kind of from an older generation, and my father, he told me, he remembered 1918. He was born in 1909.
Wow.
And I remember him telling me when I was a kid that people were walking around in masks. And I remember thinking, wow, that's really crazy. People in masks. Yeah. Now I go, at least 50 to 60% of the people, not enough here, are walking around in masks. But you're right. It could and should be maybe the new normal.
Remember when you laughed at Michael Jackson?
I still laugh at Michael Jackson.
I feel like it when I walk around the block now. It just feels so strange. And you're all nervous like when somebody walks by you? Or is that just me?
I've been petrified to go shopping for food.
Yeah.
I haven't been to a store since the 14th of March.
Same here. We're getting it delivered too.
I can't. I'm so grateful and lucky to be able to get a grocery delivery once a week. So I get my parents' food for them and some bits and pieces for our neighbours occasionally. And that's it. I don't go anywhere at all.
I've gone out once a week.
Incredible. And Dana, the same with you?
Yeah, I'd say we go out about once a week to get groceries. Although, in Finland, again, the language barrier, we had trouble figuring out if we could get groceries delivered or what. But we also lived, like I say, right downtown. So it's easy for us to just, we'd be out for 20 minutes. And, there's new evidence to say that it's really like prolonged exposure with the same person who's sick. So, spending 30 minutes or more with a person who is infected. So, we were probably very low risk going to the grocery store. And, we would, in fact, luckily it's always cold there. So, we were still we just wear our winter gloves into the grocery store, pull things off the shelves, and we'd get home, we'd put our groceries away, and then, we'd wash our hands. So, we were taking precautions and stuff. But here, we're getting Instacart deliveries and
same. Now, do you wash? Do you all wash your groceries? Like in the garage, do you wipe them down? See,
No.
we're panicky. We have them in the garage. In fact,
well, that's okay. If you leave them in the garage, then after 2 days, there won't be any bugs on them. Unless you got bugs in your garage. I'm surprised that I thought everybody in Finland had English. I mean, when I was there, everybody spoke English.
They do, and I think 70% of the population speaks English is what I read. No, the English is very good there. Maybe people over 60 or so, when there was a guy in our apartment we would run into, and one time he had the sauna before us, and he knocked on our door, and there's a sign-up sheet for the apartment sauna, and he was was it working? And then it took a couple minutes to figure out what he was saying. We couldn't communicate. But the apps and stuff are in Finnish and Swedish, and so and then all the news is in Finnish and Swedish. It's not
okay.
There's not always an English default, but their sort of national news does have a section that does English stories, but it's pretty light compared to the rest. And the news, for instance, we would just flip through whatever we had available to us over the air, and we would watch and try and figure out what's going on. And we knew maybe a couple hundred words or something, so we could kind of get a sense, but we really couldn't get any details of what's happening, and certainly no emotion behind, or our I don't think I could talk to a 2-year-old in Finnish, so we didn't get much.
I saw an interesting comment about the way news is delivered. Here, it's very sensational, breaking news with the chyron every 5 seconds. And somebody made the comment, I forgot who it was, saying that in England, he goes, I find it very calming to watch the British news, because your delivery is almost calming. Do you find that?
Yeah, we've been watching some of Trump's news conferences. You compare them to Boris's,
right?
And there's a massive. So a journalist will say, Prime Minister, you haven't delivered enough tests, and we want to know why. And it's outrageous that there is not enough PPE for our frontline workers. What are you going to do about it? And he goes, that's a really brilliant question. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that you've asked me that. Now let me put your mind at rest. Let me explain. And then if Trump had the same question, be like, you guys,
you're nasty.
Screw you.
Your ratings are too low. You can't ask me a question because your ratings are too bad.
No,
my favorite.
What's that?
My favorite in England are the arguments in Parliament.
Well, I was going to say Trump would be great in Parliament, though. He would be great.
No, because they always say, I disagree with the gentleman from,
Yeah, right.
Gentleman.
No, but I mean the news anchors here. The way the news anchors deliver the news there is a lot. Just their tone of voice is a lot more calming. Yeah.
I do have to say, when we listen to we have a daily news conference, and I feel put at ease every time I watch it. I feel that they're in control. They know what they're doing. And I'll just do what they say. They get me to feel like it's a really good idea if I just do what they say and stay at home. That will save people's lives. That's what you need to do.
The MPs.
So I'll do it. Yeah. The politicians
here. Yeah, like you say, the news reporters as well. I think you're right. It's a look. I don't know. It's almost as again in the States. It's like they have to go for ratings, and it's all about doing viewers to watch. Whereas here, because we've got free to air TV that doesn't rely on ratings because of advertising or anything like that. They can be a lot more factual and measured and calm in their delivery and just give it as it is.
Yeah.
That's why Governor Cuomo has been such a hit, because he's kind of become the most trusted spokesman in America, way over Trump. He's the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, and he gives a daily news brief that kind of makes sense, and he cuts to the quick, and he's very honest too.
He could get I think he's gotten a degree in epidemiology just from his job, right? Just from everything he's learned. He really sounds very knowledgeable. Versus,
I get most of my news. I subscribe to the New York Times.
Okay.
I read that multiple times a day. My second format of news is the BBC.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I want to go kind of left wing, I'll read the Huffington Post.
Yeah.
People say the New York Times is left wing. I don't see that. To me, it's very middle of the road. But I don't really get any TV news at all. I mean, it's, and now lately I've been reading El País, the national newspaper of Spain. They have an English edition. So I'm finding out what's going on here. Because even though I've been here for 7-8 years, I don't have command of the language yet. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think in Spain and in England and Atlanta or wherever, Finland, that they're going to make all these changes to restaurants? I mean, what they're talking about in the future, and airplanes, they're thinking of taking out all the middle seats. Did you see that? That's not going to make much of a difference. You're still not 6 feet apart from everybody.
And you're still going to be touching the same surfaces as you're walking down the aisle and all of that sort of stuff. It's not going to make much.
It's impossible to deal with that.
Right.
We've just announced today that at the end of May, we are going to quarantine anyone coming in to the UK.
Wow. Really?
Although then you read that has to be done in a private residence. So the person coming in will have to stay in a private residence quarantined. We won't have quarantine centres or anything like that. So how it's going to be, policed, I don't know. But that's
in China, they put them in hotel rooms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Quarantine people.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But that, we're lucky to be an island, and so we can protect our borders a little bit that way. But there's a flight that goes between Ireland and London every day, and there was some footage taken by a passenger on that this week, and it was every single seat was full on the plane.
Yeah.
And no mask, nobody wearing masks or gloves or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I don't understand.
We had a restaurant here, and they were celebrating. It's a Mexican restaurant. They were celebrating Cinco de Mayo, and it was just in the news today. And everybody is this huge line. Everybody had masks on, but they're standing like 2 inches away from each other. They still weren't keeping their distance. And the local police here were called. I don't know. I just saw it today. I don't know what they were actually doing.
The funny thing about that thing from yesterday, I was reading about it in the Huffington Post, this meeting that Trump had with all of these Republican leaders. None of them were wearing masks. They were like walking around while they were at a cocktail party. And all the members of the press and the TV people all were wearing masks.
Right.
It'd be so stupid.
Well, Dana, from a scientific standpoint with the masks, do you think it really is that important that everybody wear them? I mean, if I'm wearing a mask, it's really only to protect the other person more than myself. Is that really true?
Mostly. There are studies that have been done in the past about which materials and which types, because, there's the N95,
right,
which is the most protective that you can buy at the store. And then there's surgical masks, which is like that just sort of tie on over. And then
piece of paper,
right,
cloth masks. And then there's like different degrees of protection from each of those types of materials. So I don't remember the exact number. I think it's like cloth masks can provide like up to, maybe 20% effectiveness or something. So it's not great. I mean, viruses are tiny. So imagine if you threw a basketball into a basketball hoop and you had 3 hoops stacked up, like it's not impossible for that, ball or that softball or something to get through it.
Right.
But if you hit the edge, maybe, I don't know, maybe this isn't a great analogy. I'm not a virologist, but it's the point is the viruses are small and like maybe you can't see through your cotton, but it's very porous. But then the point of the mask, the cloth mask in public, is really to protect other people around you. It's not so much to protect yourself, although maybe there's some small amount of protection. And so it's like, when you're, you can read papers where they talk about like, how much moisture comes out of your mouth when you're speaking. And so that can have viral particles on it. And then you need something like 1,000 particles of virus to get sick. And so that's the thing about being in close proximity with somebody for a certain amount of time, so that your, potential of the amount of virus you have is getting on you. So then when you cough or sneeze, like, most of us probably use a tissue when we cough or sneeze, or, we've learned to do the cough into the elbow thing, but you can't always do that. Like sometimes it just comes on suddenly, or you're not thinking of it, or, in your own house, like, you might not cover your nose or whatever, or you might just cough to the side or something. But so the mask really can help in deflecting some of that spread. Like, they're not 100% effective, of course, but if you can mostly eliminate that risk for other people, like, it's not that hard to wear a mask. Like, maybe it's not always the most comfortable, and sometimes I find myself talking and then taking a big breath, and I'm like sucking the mask into my face. But
or walking.
I'm a healthy person. It's okay for me to do that. It's not a huge burden.
Fogs up my glasses.
Oh, does it? Yeah. Have you seen those scuba diver tricks and stuff of like wiping it with like washing it with baby shampoo, or like wiping it with toothpaste?
With toothpaste? Right. Oh.
Yeah, that's what divers do. That you like just sort of wipe the inside and then rinse it off. That's supposed to help with fogging.
That's true. There's different things you can do. You know?
Right.
Or get contact lenses.
Right.
I've also seen people taking like floral wire and putting it into the bridge of the mask, so that you can like press it down a little bit more.
And coffee
I've seen
filters.
masks that have that built in too.
They have coffee filters you can put in your mask, supposedly.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've meant to look up the research on that. Of course, I look everything up.
Right.
But I've seen that mentioned. It's more layers. It's sort of like my basketball hoop analogy. Like, enough hoops stacked up, like they're going to be uneven. And
and pantyhose too. I heard about that too, supposedly. I read this stuff.
I don't have a lot of pantyhose around.
See, I do. I'm wearing some now, so I'll just take.
I wish you don't share that with us, please.
Well, I don't want to hold you guys more. I mean, I'll talk as long as you want here, but I'm just surprised because this says we've been on 55 minutes, my recording device. This is cool.
I just wanted to add one thing back to the topic of like restaurants and stuff, or a couple of thoughts came up when people were talking. In Finland, from I think, schools and stuff started closing down mid-March. And I think about the beginning of April, they already said restaurants would be closed till the end of May.
Mm-hmm.
And early on. So I don't know if they'll push that back or not, but they were good in like immediate, coming out right away and putting a deadline on it. And, it could be extended, but I think that was sort of comforting knowing like there's takeout and stuff, but, no restaurant seating. And, Helsinki had the most cases and most active cases. And so they actually closed down Helsinki region for a while. And so we were considering, should we come home or not, when they started saying like, oh, no Europeans can travel to the US. And we were like, oh my gosh, do we need to leave now? What are we going to do? So like, had we taken a train to go to the airport, I contacted the embassy and they said, we could, but we had to have paperwork showing that like we were going to the airport. And in fact, there were no trains. Normally you can take a train to the airport, but there was no train to the airport. I guess to, not encourage people just be going out there, or I don't know, employees still have to go out there and stuff. But then what they were doing for people who were repatriating, when you arrived at the airport, if you didn't have a car, someone to pick you up, Finland actually paid for people to take taxis to their home, to not ride public transportation. And so the state, of course, again, my lack of hearing all the news there, but, the state really seemed to be doing a lot of subsidizing costs for citizens or people who are, can legally live in Finland, for extra costs that were being put on them. And then actually on that same note, the program I was in was all international students, and there were 9 of us. So none of us were Finnish. It's only myself and then a woman from Iran that could actually go home right now, because we're the only countries that have commercial flights. all the other countries people are from. There was a woman from Mongolia who left this week, but she was able to get on like an evacuation flight through her embassy. And then everybody else, like there are no commercial flights or, so they have to wait and see if there's an evacuation flight. And our residence permits all are expiring at the end of May. So they who are still there, they have to pay to extend their residence permits. Plus they're going to have to pay rent and figure out what to do for future months. So like there are definitely people, sort of stuck in places who haven't been able to go. And then to the point of traveling, we had to fly. We took a train to Helsinki and we stayed overnight because we had at the airport hotel. We had an early flight. There were only 3 flights a week from Helsinki to Amsterdam on Finnair that we could catch the direct flight from Amsterdam home. So we had an early morning flight that didn't have a lot of people on it. People were spaced out, but not a lot. Like everyone was like in the window seat, but we'd be like one row behind. So we weren't, exactly not close. But then on the Delta flight home, the plane could have held almost 300 people and there were like 50 people on the flight. So we didn't have anyone in the row in front of us, beside us, behind us. Like I felt really comfortable. And then I think it sounds like airlines are going to requiring masks, and like all the attendants had masks. And they said, if you need a drink or something during the flight, don't come to the galley, ring your bell. And they were like immediately coming. I mean, within 30 seconds or so, they were.
Sorry to bug you. There's somebody at our front door. You guys want to talk? I have to answer the front door.
I'm getting a FaceTime call, so I'm going to.
You have to go?
I do have to go.
Doris.
But thank you for, it's been interesting to hear different countries.
Yeah, and it's been great.
What's going on?
This has been fantastic. And everything worked great. This is so amazing. Thank you for joining the World Symposium.
Yeah.
You guys can continue talking. I can come back, or you want to end it. Let's end it.
I have to go, but nice meeting you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Nice meeting you guys.
All right. Thank you very much to Glenn and Kelly and Dana and Don. Sounds like a band. Thank you all, really. Well, that was a lot of fun on my end, and I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed and got some information out of it. It is just mind-blowing how this pandemic is changing the world, changing the way we deal with everything. And it's going to be probably like that for a long time. In fact, I was thinking that it may even change the way we write love songs. You might even have song titles like, If You Love Me, Stay Away From Me. I actually came up with that one in the shower. So when I got out of the shower, I wrote the rest of it. And here it is.
If you love me, stay away from me. If you love me, don't show resistance. You can love me from across the street. It's more than 6 feet, so keep your distance. If you need me, won't you guarantee? And won't you pardon me for my persistence? I listen carefully to the CDC. So if you love me, keep your distance. Kindly stay right where you are. I'll blow you kisses from my car. And when we're home in separate rooms, we can use FaceTime or maybe Zoom.
Maybe Zoom.
Yeah. I'll make you meals, that's for sure. I'll just leave them outside your door. Being together is what we deserve. But first we've gotta flatten the curve.
Yeah, the curve.
Gonna test your nerves. If you need me, won't you hear my plea? And more importantly, you better listen through this insanity. For all humanity, don't get emotional. It's very crucial to keep you social distance.
That song became a video, by the way. It's one of those videos where everybody's singing at the same time, one of those grid things. And you can see, well, what I'll do is I'll leave a link in my show notes where you can find it. It's on my YouTube channel, and it's also on my Facebook page. My Facebook page, by the way, is Richie Phillips. There's also another one. It's Ryman Richie Phillips. You can find me either way there, and there's song parodies and all kinds of other things that I'm getting involved with, including an every once in a while live piano bar that I'm doing on Facebook Live. Trying to do those every other week, maybe every other Thursday. I'm trying to solidify when that's going to happen. If you friend me on Facebook, it'll keep you abreast of when that's happening. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Hope you'll listen to more of them. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast or know somebody with an interesting talent, you can email me at richie1077@gmail.com. And I will leave you with a famous quote. It was football coach Lou Holtz who said, "Your talent determines what you can do. Your motivation determines how much you're willing to do. Your attitude determines how well you do it." Write that down.
Take it to the top.